We're getting closer to running out of electricity because of our ridiculous global warming policies above all. We're now a week away from summer and already the warning went out today in New South Wales. Oh, please switch off some of your appliances. Sydney's too short of electricity.
The advice is always the same. On really hot days, do you really need to have every single light on in the house? Do you need to have your air conditioning, down at 19 degrees? You don't.
Some Sydney suburbs hit 37 degrees, which is warm, but it's not 40 or 45. But it was enough to have Australia's energy market operators sweating.
We are experiencing some quite unseasonable hot weather here in New South Wales today, and effectively that is a summer heat wave while we're still here in spring. That combined with a number of major generation units that are on outage, both due to planned and unplanned maintenance, is causing tightness in electricity supply.
Get away with you. Sydney's never had a 35-degree day just a week out from summer. I mean, come off it. Now, it's predicted these shortages are going to get worse, particularly in Victoria, which is no surprise. I mean, we've got politicians and activists all over the country declaring a war on fossil fuels, coal-fired generators being replaced by stuff that doesn't even work as well, green stuff. So it's karma, really, that this happens to a city whose mayor has just given $22,000 to Rising Tide activists who staged a protest on Sunday to close coal exports at Newcastle Harbour. And this money from the Sydney mayor is to help the poor dears pay their legal fees. Well, welcome to Sydney's sweaty future, guys. This is what you're arguing for. And how symbolic that this has also happened just a couple of days after Federal Energy and Climate Change Minister Chris Bowen flew back from the latest United Nations Climate Conference in Baku, where he promised to go in even greener. He also gave away $50 million of your money to Pacific Islands for climate change and helped negotiate a deal where richer countries like ours will give poorer ones like China and India and Iran and Afghanistan $460 billion a year. Yet still delegates at this conference complained it wasn't enough.
We are extremely, extremely disappointed with this incident.
But apart from handing over trainloads of our money, what did that UN climate conference actually achieve? Well, Tony Thomas, author and financial journalist, has dug deep and written up the results on Quadrant Online, and he joins me now. Tony, always great to see you. You've always got great stuff. What did this UN climate conference actually achieve?
Well, the developing world only got a fifth of what they wanted. They wanted $1.3 trillion US, and as you say, they got $300 billion US only. They've been always asking for this money, and it's always being promised in some vague way, but it ain't delivered very much. On the important issue of whether the world can transition from fossil fuels to renewables, this was sort of the big pledge last year and the year before that. But all they've done this year is kick the issue down the road to next year's conference in Brazil. So the fact is that there is no transition. The shares of fossil fuels are continuing to be around the 80% or thereabouts, and nothing's happening on this transition.
And plus, countries that have tried it, like Germany, are suddenly realising they're going broke and deindustrialising and pulling back. So, yeah, it really was just a big cash money grab. Can you tell me how many Australians went to this farce of a conference?
Well, the official list is published, and plus the official list guests. So that amounted to something like 400, led by Chris Bowen, and then Malcolm Turnbull showed up, and so did Peter Malinauskas from South Australia. There was somebody from the Trades Hall Council in Victoria, and there was Get Up. And then there was a huge unofficial crowd of all the activists and academics and people like that. Well, they weren't allowed to play any serious part in the conference. They were corralled to something called the green zone, and they couldn't get into the blue zone where all the real action was. So that's the score there.
Now, some of the biggest delegations came from countries that you wouldn't think would have the money for it. Brazil sent a massive one. And and a couple of African countries that you'd think are, sort of busted did too. This surprises me because what you found is that what they went to was a total rip-off, paying, where people had to pay a fortune for a feed in a room.
Yeah, that's right. Well, of course, the Azerbaijanis sent about 2,200. Brazil and Turkey sent 2,000 each, and so did the Abu Dhabi and China sent 1,000. But the key thing, as you say, is these very poor countries. I had a look at Burundi, which is the second poorest country in the world, and they sent 200. And then the fourth poorest country is the Democratic Republic of Congo, and they sent 400 or 500. And they're all on fixed allowances, basically, especially from the UN. And the hotel prices were such rip-offs that they had nothing left for food. So they were wandering around the conference half starving and having to live on cheese and crackers at some of the events. And I did notice one hotel, the best one called the Sharp Palace, was charging 18,000 Aussie dollars a night. And for the fortnight, they wanted 300,000 Aussie dollars. Well, these Africans were kicked out into the suburbs. They couldn't afford the hotels. And they even created a directory of where you could get free food during the events. So that would be free cheese and crackers at this event and so on. And I read in an African magazine that there's a new type of lady called the food seductress, and at COP they were deliberately going on dates with wealthy Westerners solely so they could get a free meal. Then they just disappeared. And that's all documented in this African magazine.
Oh, Tony. Well, that sounds like a metaphor for the whole conference, looking for rich Westerners to give them a feed. I think that's the whole thing. That's your climate conference for you. Tony Thomas, thank you so much for your time.